It's looking like 2024 is going to be a very quiet year in the comic book movie world. James Gunn is still working on the new DC universe that's not coming out until 2025, and Marvel's only going to give us Deadpool 3 in July. But don't worry, superhero fans, Sony has us covered. We've got the much anticipated release of Venom 3, and a Kraven the Hunter film, and a Madam Web film that's apparently coming out in 3 months? Huh. Okay, so Sony's Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man isn't generating the buzz that the execs probably thought they were going to get. And their other non-Spider-Verse films that they have in various stages of development are a little puzzling to me too. Like, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, but I couldn't tell you a single thing about Nightwatch, Jackpot, El Muerto, or Hypno Hustler. If given to the right creative teams and their goal is to tell a good story, any of these films could actually turn out to be really enjoyable, and that's all I really want at the end of the day. Although, there's always that one pipe dream that they've always been floating around, and that's for a Sinister Six film. And look, there's no other way around it. The Spider-Man adjacent characters are Sony's golden goose. They'll do whatever they want with them, and the Sinister Six could be that break glass in case of emergency. Just build up the villains and assemble them in some anti-hero version of the Avengers and print a Morbillion dollars. However, any attempt to make a film about the Sinister Six is just gonna be bad. Let me explain. In case you aren't aware, the Sinister Six are a group of Spider-Man villains who band together to take on the good guys. In Amazing Spider-Man Annual Number 1, the original team was created by Dr. Octopus and comprised of himself, Electro, Kraven, Mysterio, Sandman, and Vulture. Over the decades, basically every single villain Spider-Man has ever faced has joined the group in one of its 16 different iterations in the comics. And even the name Sinister Six is pretty flexible. Sometimes they're the Sinister 7, Sinister 12, Sinister 60, or the Sinister War, which was 6 teams of 6 members, so 36 villains against Spider-Man. And that's just the main comic book continuity. All that matters is that some sinister villains, whose numbers are usually, but not always, divisible by 6, band together to fight Spider-Man. And they work perfectly in all the cartoon adaptations like Spider-Man the Animated Series, where they were renamed the Insidious Six because 90s kids television and all. We had episodes that filled in the blanks on who each of these characters were, and then later we see them all team up with the other villains that Spider-Man has already beaten in one huge crossover episode. Or like how Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4 worked in each of the villains as a boss for a certain section of the game, until the end when they all team up for one giant final epic boss fight. And that's kind of the first major red flag right there. The 94 Spider-Man cartoon didn't touch the Sinister Six until Season 2. Spider-Man PS4, you get the team after about 20-ish hours of gameplay, if you get sidetracked easily. But when it comes to films, how do you squeeze enough story out of 6 different antagonists in just 90 minutes? Well, you could spend 6 or maybe 5 films trying to flesh out each of the villains as they relate to Spider-Man, give them each their own wants and desires, or you could just turn to the old reliable solution of seeding Easter eggs in previous films and hope that pays off in the sequels that may or may not happen. So how have the films handled this so far? Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy wasn't made with the villain team in mind. I mean, 4 of his 5 villains died by the end of the film, with Sandman being redeemed at the close of the series. And I appreciate that. Tell a good story, be done, and there's no need to overstay your welcome. Next is Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man series. The first film ended with Lizard being teased that he had joined some group. In the next one, Rhino appears, Electro dies so he's out, and then Green Goblin is recruited by the gentleman who walked past Doc Ock's arms and Vulture's wings to get to the new Rhino suit. And then we get the big reboot into the MCU. It's actually really odd that the MCU never tried to take on the Sinister Six, because this is about the only place where it could logically make sense, but no, not even a single hint. Sure, Spider-Man has some of his own villains like Vulture, Shocker, Prowler technically, Scorpion, and Mysterio, and that's before we get to the big crossover in No Way Home. Through multiversal magical nonsense, we get each of the main villains from each of the previous franchise's films for a comeback. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman, Rhys Ifans' Lizard, and Jamie Foxx's Electro. Fans cheered, everyone loved it. I did too, I'm not gonna lie. But it was missing something. For starters, there were only 5 members and not 6.
I give you the Sinister Six.
I'd start taking math lessons, because I count only 5.
Venom is technically there, but he's off in Mexico getting drunk, so he doesn't count. And I get it. Tobey's Spider-Man had 3 films, Andrew had 2, but none of the villains were actually Tom Holland's. There was no weight between any of the fighting between this Peter and the multiverse-displaced villains. It's not until halfway through the film that any of them give the main Spidey any true conflict. In my opinion, the obvious fix would have been to keep Mysterio alive to bring him in. After all, he did kick off all the conflict in Act 1 that required all the forgetting spell to begin with. It would have also been very fun to see Mysterio take one hell of a victory lap for correctly BSing his way into saying that there is a multiverse and the main MCU is Earth 616. He could have also been the glue that binds all the villains, show them how this new universe works, and unified them against Tom Holland's Spider-Man in an unofficial version of the Sinister Six, instead of just doing it out of plot convenience. I mean, sure, they did imply that he died, but it's kind of Mysterio's whole gimmick to fool people. He took one low-caliber round to the lower abdomen with no exit wound, and no blood splattered all over him nor the floor. He's not bleeding out in just 30 seconds. Just because Edith said all illusions are down, doesn't mean he couldn't have done some good old-fashioned, non-drone trickery. And now that I'm looking at it closely, the wounds on his face from his illusion doesn't actually line up to how they really are, but they do actually match his video that he sends to the Daily Bugle, which means he must have recorded that after Peter already left. Or even Scorpion, whose whole deal was that he wanted to know who Spider-Man was at the end of Homecoming, and now that everyone knew it would have made more sense. Either way, Mysterio was presumed dead, and Scorpion didn't show up at all, and all of Tom Holland's other pre-established villains are now somewhere else out there in the multiverse. But the fact that we did get so close without actually doing it kinda does ruin any chances down the line of actually getting the real team. It took 3 Spider-Men to take down 5 villains, and they struggled all the way through. That's where the bar is now set. And with the Sinister Six film, if they do have one Spider-Man taking on 6 of them easily by the time the credits roll, especially if that Spider-Man was Tobey, Andrew, or Tom's, it will kind of take away how great this moment was, if that makes any kind of sense. It's like no matter what they do, it'll always feel like a cheap knockoff of No Way Home. However, that's not the thing that worries me the most. Having Spider-Man take down his grouped up baddies has usually been done very well so far. My biggest fear is that they're going to do this without Peter Parker. And from the look of things, Peter Parker is only going to be used in the MCU or the animated Spider-Verse films and not the entirety of the Sony Spider-Man universe. And Tom Holland might not even be an option unless he's given a good enough script. Without Spider-Man, a whole key element of the character is removed. I know there's the cliche of a superhero is only as good as their villains. The same does go the other way around too. The hero needs to be tested, not just in fighting, but a good villain can test their values by being the opposite of them in morals. And when they do eventually fight in the big climactic ending, that should be the focal point of why they're fighting. Because his villains show us that side of Peter Parker that makes us root for him. His mantra of "with great power comes great responsibility" is challenged by every villain, but in a different way. Could he use that great power to get back at the systems that kept him in poverty, like Vulture? Could he use his great powers to get back at those who put him down, like Electro? Or could he use his great powers to stand above the commoners, like Green Goblin? So what has Sony done to compensate? Well, there's one specific line from the most film of all time that tells us everything.
But I think a bunch of guys like us should team up, could do some good.
No! God, please, no!
Sony has been turning all of the villains into generic anti-heroes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just different. If the right creative team is behind it, anything could be an amazing piece of art. But their track record so far? Where it loses me is how they usually resort to the same formula of giving them their own antagonists, who are usually lesser known copies of the baddie, and they fight with no real emotional weight behind it. Venom fights other symbiotes and then Carnage. Morbius fights another not vampire, and Kraven isn't out yet, but I can almost guarantee that Russell Crowe's Hunter father and brother, who ends up being the Chameleon, and I guess Rhino as well? Well, there goes any hopes I had that this new series would actually be set in Andrew Garfield's multiverse. So are the Sinister Six actually the good guys without a Spider-Man to fight? Are they setting up the 3 Spider-Women in the Madame Web film to be the new focal point of the Sony Spider-Man universe? And if they do all meet, and then they fall back to the comic book inspirations, are the supposed anti-heroes that had their own spin-off films going to turn villain just to fight the Spider-Women? Or they just give up and sell the rights back to Disney? I genuinely don't know, and only time will tell. But what do you guys think? Would you be interested in seeing a Sinister Six film? Let me know in the comments down below. And of course, if you enjoyed this week's video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more weekly content on comic books and nerd stuff. I've been Eric, and you've been awesome.